please. With that said, let's go ahead and get into it. Andrew, why don't you give us a brief rundown on Senate Bill 1 as it was passed, its intended effect and implications, and then we can kind of discuss the injunction and what its implications actually are.
Thank you, Dwayne. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. That was the recent Supreme Court case from 2022 that basically said that states such as Maryland, where you had to have some sort of higher standard of good cause to be able to carry a firearm outside of your home, was unconstitutional. That caused, Maryland was no exception, tens of thousands of people to go and apply for their carry permits. They took the classes, they paid the fees, they did the training, they passed the qualification, they applied to the state police, and they got their permits. This caused terror to certain members of the General Assembly. Once again, I am not in the General Assembly. I do not work for Anthony Brown, the Attorney General. No one asked me, was this a good idea? I'm only here to talk to you about it. So they sat down and said, quite openly and honestly, we need to contain the ability of the people to carry firearms. We need to curtail the Second Amendment as best we can. They did a lot of things that I care about, but I don't really care about tonight. They increased the permit application fees to $125. They increased the renewal fees to $75. Things where if you're now on probation for a DWI, you can't have a gun during probation, things like that. But the real target this year, the first Senate bill of the session, Senate Bill 1, also known as the Gun Safety Act of 2023, was passed, and it does a lot of things. It breaks down to 3 specific areas where you are no longer allowed to carry a firearm, as well as it's going to be now known as we push forward, the private building carry rule. They said you can't carry firearms in areas for children and vulnerable individuals. You say, well, I wonder what that is, but okay. Government or public infrastructure areas, that makes, once again, that's going to be broader than you would think. And then the ominous special purpose areas. What is a special purpose area? I'll tell you in a couple minutes. Violations of this, 1 year in jail or a $1,000 fine or both. So areas for children and vulnerable individuals, let's start with them. They've added preschools, pre-kindergarten facilities, or the grounds of the facility. This is much broader than I'm sure a lot of you would think. When I was young, I went to this place called Learn and Play. My parents would take me there every day. I'm sure some of you know someone or have encountered someone that has a licensed daycare facility at their house. That would be covered under this. Once again, pre-kindergarten facilities, preschools, and most importantly, the grounds of the facility. So the lovely man or woman down the street that has a license to allow 6 children to come there during the day, that would now be a covered entity where you could not carry a firearm, period, on the grounds. So if you were going there to pick up your child, drop off your child, just going to say hi to your neighbor, you could not carry there. Private, primary, or secondary schools or grounds of the school. Under Maryland law, up until this, you could theoretically, it would not be a good idea, and there would also be issues with federal law. But under Maryland law, if you went to Boys Latin, Gilman, any of the other private schools, you could have possibly been able to carry a firearm there. Not a good idea, but maybe could have. Now, any private, primary, or secondary school, and once again, the grounds of the school. So if you are going to a soccer game there, if you are going to walk your dog there, if you are dropping a child off, if you're picking a child up, these would be all instances where this is covered under here. You could not carry a firearm. They added healthcare facilities, which runs the gamut. Hospitals, related institutions, ambulatory surgical facilities, a facility that is organized primarily to help in the rehabilitation of disabled individuals, a home health agency, a hospice, a facility that provides radiological or other diagnostic imagery services, a medical laboratory, an alcohol abuse and drug treatment abuse program. All of these places, no firearms there, period, moving forward. The next class we're going to talk about, government or public infrastructure areas. A building or any part of a building owned, leased, or used by a unit of state or local government. So remember how broad that can be. That can obviously be the Cecil County Executive Office building. That can also be the Cecil County Agricultural Co-op Outreach building. That can be the MVA. That can be anything else state or local government related. A building of a public or private institution of higher education. So that is going to be all colleges here, all universities here, private or public. This is also going to be things you would not think of. North American trade schools. This is very broadly defined. The community colleges, anything designed to cater to a post-secondary education, any kind of vocational program, any kind of computer educational building, anything like that, no firearms. Doesn't have to be owned by the government as long as it is designed as an institution of higher education. So be careful. A location currently being used as a polling place. So if you're going to go vote, which I hope everyone in here votes, if you're going to your polling place, you cannot carry a firearm there. If you are not even going there intending to vote, where I vote, it's a senior citizen center where people actually live. They could not go anywhere near the polling areas in their own building with the firearm. Bear that in mind. They've added a multitude of places that I'm unaware of any incidents occurring there, but I'm glad they're now covered. An electric plant or an electric storage facility, a gas plant, a nuclear power plant. So any of you thinking of going to the nuclear power plants in southern Maryland, do not bring your guns with you. Now, under these areas, and I have not actually seen a single sign yet, I'm sure they're out there, but at the main entrance, and this is, I can't wait till I have to argue this case. We're going to argue what's the main entrance and what's the secondary entrance. The law requires that only at the main entrance they display a clear and conspicuous sign saying that this building is owned or leased by the state or local government, and it's not permissible to wear, carry, or transport a firearm in the building or that part of the building. Once again, be very careful how this is written. Everyone can go through that door right there. Everyone came in here. If they determined that this was, it's obviously not, but was a government public infrastructure area, despite that being what everyone perceives to be the main entrance, if there's no sign there, but where we think the main entrance is on the other side of the building and we have the sign there, it's your problem, not the local government's problem. The biggest change here also is finally in the third area, the special purpose areas where firearms pre-injunction were not allowed, period. A location licensed to sell or dispense alcohol or cannabis for on-site consumption. There was no requirement that on-site consumption has to actually be occurring. On my drive up here, I passed several liquor stores. Depending on their liquor licenses, they may be licensed for on-premises consumption. Just because they don't allow it, that's not what the law says. They just have to be licensed for it. So you could not carry a firearm in any of those places. You could not carry a firearm at a stadium, and that is, once again, broadly defined. That's not just Camden Yards and M&T Bank Stadium and Cal Ripken Stadium. That's going to be pretty much any other thing you can think of as a stadium. A museum. I know, everyone knows what the Smithsonian is, but the local Cecil County Historical Society, that may also be a museum. Bear that in mind. A racetrack. I don't know what they meant, if they meant horses or if they meant cars. And from further research, I think they're okay with us not understanding which and just saying, how about neither? So once again, if you want to go watch the ponies, you cannot bring your firearm. If you're going to want to go watch the cars, you can't bring your firearm. Finally, video lottery facilities. And that's a facility in which players play video lottery terminals and table games and a casino. That's obviously going to clearly include casinos, but be very careful. If you are at a small corner store that does live keno is one of the things defined here, that could very well be a place you could no longer carry a firearm. Now, there are exceptions to these. If you're an armored car driver, things like that. So I'm sure there might be someone in here who says, wait, I'm an armored car driver, and the vast majority of you, those exceptions do not apply to. If you're the owner of the property, there may be exceptions. If you're the actual lessee of the property, there might be exceptions. But as a general default rule, you're not armored car drivers, you're not licensed armored car drivers, so you cannot carry in these situations. Next, and very controversially, and we're going to call it the private building rule, dwellings of another. So that means a house that's not yours. You can't enter or trespass there unless the owner or the owner's agent has given you express permission, either to the person or to the public generally, to wear, carry, or transport a firearm inside the dwelling. So if I want to go over to Dwayne's house and he has not told me, Andrew, feel free to carry a firearm there, I cannot carry a firearm there. If Dwayne had a sign up, something like this, that would qualify as permission to carry a firearm in there. But if I just show up to any one of you lovely people's house and there is no signage and you haven't told me specifically I can carry a firearm in there, it is now a violation of Maryland law to do so. We'll talk about it a little later with the injunction. Dwelling, though, that only means the actual part of the house that, or a building that provides living or sleeping facilities. So it wouldn't count as the yard, your shed, things like that, unless you sleep in your shed. So you could be walking your dog with your firearm and walk onto your neighbor's grass to talk to him. That would not be a violation of this. If he did not know you have a firearm and give you specific permission to enter, if you went in and had an iced tea, that would be a violation of this. It doesn't include the common elements of condominiums, apartments, things of that nature. It doesn't include the adjacent land. So you could, go, if you are in your apartment building, wear your firearm to go get your mail at the communal mailbox and vice versa. Another issue, non-dwellings. This is going to be everywhere else. Absent any other legal proceedings, as enacted, you could not wear and carry on the property of another unless the owner or the owner's agent has posted a clear and conspicuous sign indicating it is permissible to wear or carry. Once again, doesn't have to be this sign, doesn't define what a sign would be, but you'd have to have a sign like this. Or the owner or the owner's agent has given the person express permission to wear and carry on the property. So once again, this would be everywhere else in the state of Maryland that you do not own or directly lease, that is a building, whatever it is, any definition you want to come up with, you could not wear and carry in that building unless you had the owner's permission or there was a sign. And then the other big changes they made this past year, Maryland, it was originally a carry permit. While not tactically advisable, you were free to open carry. You could carry it on your head for all they cared. that has now changed. Now, if you are carrying and it is visible, or does everyone know what printing is? If you've got it concealed but not concealed well, that would be printing. If it is visible or if you are printing, that is now a violation. Your firearm has to be concealed. Now, a momentary and inadvertent exposure or momentary and inadvertent printing, that's okay, specifically under the statute. But once again, I look forward to representing all of you good people who end up testing this on a windy day and your shirt blows up and someone sees the presence of your firearm and is so offended they call the police and they come and arrest you. Please call me after that happens. So it's going to be a new day and age. If your firearm is in a vehicle, it now has to be locked in a container. Locked being the key and operative word. If you are not in that vehicle, your firearm, your vehicle locking in and of itself does not count. It needs to be locked in an enclosed container. And once again, just to be clear, there are a million exceptions for police, correctional officers, armored car carriers, railroad police, security guards, things of that nature. But to the average, everyday one of you, there are no real good exceptions to this. Dwayne.
So, lots of stuff there. So, from the last discussion that we had, let's go through a few places just for everybody's sake. So, stuff like CVS's and Walgreens.
Once again,
Under the old law, under the pre-injunction.
As enacted, that's how we'll say it. As enacted, no go. Unless they've got a sign, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, couldn't carry a firearm there.
So how about this? How about, and again, pre-injunction or as written, a restaurant, Olive Garden, I don't know, anywhere that's so you can go and get a glass of wine and with your pasta, right?
Obviously, yeah, you could not carry in there. And once again, it doesn't say if you're drinking. It doesn't say if you're with a party that's drinking. It doesn't say if they're actively serving. So if you went to TGI Fridays with your family, you could not carry there. You could be sober as can be. If you rented TGI Fridays for a private party that did not serve any alcohol, could not carry in there. If a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous had a meeting at TGI Fridays and they were all as sober as can be, doesn't matter, could not carry in there.
How about the private mom and pop restaurant that has one of these signs in the wall, but also sells alcohol? That's what we call a trap.
That's a trap.
That's a trap.
That's a trap. If they could put all the signs up they wanted, if they had a license to sell alcohol on premise, you could still not carry in there.
Which includes some liquor stores, even if they don't serve on premises.
Yes.
Depends on what their license says. All right, banks. How about banks?
You would think, oh my God almighty, we want to make sure people are going to the banks, they're transacting lots of currency. But once again, unless you're an armored car driver, unless there's a sign, you could not carry inside of a bank.
Okay, so homes, and I know you talk to this, homes of family and friends. You go to a family member's house for a birthday party. You pick up your kid from a neighbor's house for a birthday party.
You better hope they like the Second Amendment and they gave you express permission to carry on their property. There's no exception for family, no exception for friends. If you have, your parents, your in-laws, if they don't like the Second Amendment and they don't want to give you express permission to carry there, you cannot carry there.
The law is written is very, very tricky.
As enacted, yes.
So, all right, here's one that is interesting. Walmart.
If you look on their website, it said they allowed concealed carry inside of Walmart. Do so at your peril, or check the website every time before you go. Because if they had removed that in the interim, in between the last time you checked and the day you chose to go, and someone wants to make a point of it, that's your problem, not Walmart's problem.
So we talked about daycares, we talked about small daycares inside of people's homes, doctor's offices and patient first. Now, does that fall under the private property, or does that fall under the medical?
That would fall under the medical facilities. So once again, patient first, your doctor's office, your dentist's office. Doesn't matter if they want you to carry or not, you cannot carry there.
All right. Churches, places of worship.
Those are conspicuously absent from this legislation. So if, as enacted, there was a sign, or if you had specific permission to carry there, you could carry away.
Okay. So the law as enacted, where can you carry or where could you carry? Well, I was just driving down the road.
The state senator that sponsored this legislation, he gave numerous interviews when he introduced it, and he was very open and honest about this. He only wanted you to carry in your own home. Basically, if you could drive around in your car and carry in your own home. He did not want you carrying anywhere else. He was often asked, has there been a single incident where a lawful possession of a firearm by a permit holder was used for any kind of malfeasance? And there was not a single example that existed in the state of Maryland. Just the thought of the possibility that someone would do something. We have all these people that have been through training, been fingerprinted, background checks by the state police. They're clearly menaces up to no good, and we want to curtail their rights to carry. So he was very open and honest that this was by design to make it almost untenable for you to carry a firearm anywhere other than your own house or your own business in the state of Maryland, depending on what your own business was.
So it was by design, essentially, as we all know.
Absolutely.
And this was Senator Waldstreicher and former Senator Lee?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Senator Lee has now advanced up state government. She is no longer in the state Senate. She is now in the executive branch.
Both from Montgomery? PG?
He was from Montgomery.
Yeah.
I don't know where she was representing.
Okay. So, all right. So that is Senate Bill 1 as enacted.
Yes.
So